Dead on Your Feet. Arthur Grant Michaels, St. Martin's Press, New York, 1993. Stan Kraychik Mystery, Book 3. Narrator Eric Aust. In memory of Tajana and Andre, with gratitude and respect and love, thanks to the patience and generosity of my friends. Chapter 12. Whose lover is she? On the way back to Snips, I felt a renewed optimism and freedom within me, and as much as I denied it, I knew it was from the nooner with Rico. See, I'm atypical for a gay man. Before Rico, I had never tricked while I was involved with someone else. Yet, strangely, I felt no guilt for doing it now. Maybe because the pleasant episode hadn't been aimed at getting back at Rafik and his infidelities. I did it because the opportunity arrived, and I found Rico attractive and likable and willing. And in my perverse psychology, having sex with him had actually galvanized my connection to Rafik. I knew I would love him forever. Or was that the guilt talking now? No, and again no. The sex with Rico had simply been a novel way to get off with a young Brazilian on a spring afternoon. It had been my long overdue initiation into real manhood, into enjoying sex for its own sake, without emotion and without engaging the heart. Sure. I arrived at Snips and Nicole remarked, "You're all pink and flushed. What happened?" "I guess I was walking fast, doll." She gave me a suspicious look and said, "Then you'd better cool down before you get back to work." A customer? Another walk-in request. 2 in one day, and me in semi-retirement? This must be my brief moment of fame. I glanced toward the waiting room where all the chairs were empty. "So where is she?" "Having a cocktail at the Ritz bar. I'm to telephone there the moment you arrive." That really pushes the term full service. "Is she royalty?" "She seems to think so." While Nicole made the telephone call, I went to my office and started some fresh coffee. Within minutes, Nicole joined me back there. "How was your busy day?" she said. "Branco sends his regards." "You mean Lieutenant Branco?" "I suspected that you'd seen him, the way you came in all flushed." "That flush, doll, was from something else entirely." "Was there any message from the lieutenant?" "Yeah, he wants you to have his baby," Nicole replied. "I don't think medical science is up to that challenge." 5 minutes later, my walk-in arrived. It was Tony Di Natale, looking somewhat haggard from her recent detention. Or was it from more recent exertions in Rafik's bed? Now that I was an unfeeling sex device, what did any of that matter? "I'm so glad you're able to see me," she said. "My hair, I can't get it clean. I think it's because of the police. Or the bloody guilt of Lady Macbeth. Most people don't realize that emotional stress can cause havoc with their hair. As for blaming the police, didn't she know that a certain cop was so hot for her? He was dating my best friend just to relieve the pressure. Did she even care? "That Lieutenant Branco sure is something, huh?" I said, putting a litmus test to her. "He's a fascist," she replied curtly. Acid turns red. "Not to some," I said with a glance toward Nicole. "Hell hath no fury like Nikki's eyes at that moment." "The issue is," said Tony, "can you fix my hair?" Now, in my vernacular, hair care is not what I'd categorize as an issue. Issues for me, at least the ones you're not giving birth to or receiving in your mailbox as part of a subscription, comprise the larger, more difficult questions of life. Complex, debatable topics like world population or domestic labor policy or the separation of church and state. Yet every day I hear people say things like, "I have issues about red meat," or "I'm working through my obesity issues," or "I have monogamy issues." But if Tony Di Natale had no conscience about abusing language, I could make bad verbiage too. "I'll do my best," I said, examining and analyzing her hair with my knowing fingers. "But truth in the aesthetic arts exists beyond the mundane. I own my limitations. I appeal to a higher power. I allow all the creative forces of the universe to flow through me. I give the hair permission to wave. I honor its integrity." The trouble was, Tony Di Natale seemed convinced by my peroration. Or else she was humoring a New Age nutlet. And for all my invocation, I received not divine cosmetic assistance, but instead a dose of good old carnal jealousy, for as I shampooed Tony de Natal's auburn tresses, I realized that this was the very hair and head that my beloved Rafik had recently held in his hands. As I worked up the creamy lather, I wondered, how had he held her? Tenderly or fiercely? Had he slid his long, tapered fingers languorously through this hair and gently caressed these nipples and this forehead? Had he kissed these eyes? Had he murmured lip against lip how smooth and soft her body felt next to his? Or had he grabbed great fistfuls of the vibrant mane and pulled on it, like the reins on some untamed animal? He could vanquish only through his howls of ecstasy. For a brief and insane moment, I was tempted to botch her hair and do something tasteless with it, like a severe frizz, but my artist soul intervened, for Tony de Natal had my favorite type of hair for a woman. Long, naturally wavy, and auburn, with reddish highlights. I applied a dollop of conditioner to her wet hair. It was my own special formulation and an elixir that would coax the hidden highlights to blaze in all their mad Mars-red glory. I rinsed Tony's hair and wrapped it in a towel. Then I led her to my station, where I could dry that hair lovingly under warm air while I charmed her with my version of a Perry Mason cross-examination. I began, "Are you enjoying your time with Rafik?" Her eyes shot toward my reflection in the mirror. Then her full mouth turned upward in a generous smile. "I hope you understand it's all plutonic," she said. "I'm sure." "Honest," she said, adding more conviction to her voice. "I just like to play with men." "Play has a lot of meanings," I said. "I'm not having sex with him or anything like that." "What else," I thought, "is anything like sex?" "Where you're having sex with Max Harkey," I said. She gasped. "You are blunt." I shrugged and applied slightly more pressure to her scalp with my clever left hand. Then I sifted her hair through my fingers, lifting it and fanning it outward from her head into the warm stream of air coming from the dryer. My reflection in the mirror resembled a conjurer beckoning secrets from the depths of my client's dark heart. Tony de Natal closed her eyes and spoke with a confessional tone. "At first I was just toying with Max. He was in Europe looking for a conductor, and rumor had it he was offering an obscenely lucrative contract for the spring ballet season here in Boston. I wanted that contract, and I was willing to use sex to get it." Then her shoulders bounced slightly as she chuckled. "The trouble is," she continued, "my flirtation backfired, and I fell in love with him." "Did he know?" "I'm sure I was just another statistic for him." "What about Jason Sears?" I asked. "Were you engaged to him then?" She answered, "Jason is a dear friend, but I'm afraid I set him up as a smokescreen. We were never engaged. I wanted to make Max jealous, but it didn't work." I recalled that night, and Max Harkey hadn't even been in the room when Tony announced the engagement. Perhaps she had told him earlier, or perhaps it was all lies even now. "How did Jason feel about the hoax?" I said. Tony snickered. "He was already in love with me. Isn't that typical? He wanted me exactly the same way I wanted Max. Sometimes I think love is pure accident. You start out so simply as friends or colleagues, and the next thing you know, you're hoping for something from the other person. Some favor, special consideration, or even sex, but the other person is oblivious or else unwilling to give you what you want. And when you start making demands, politely at first, but when that doesn't work, you get hurt, and then you get angry, and it all escalates until finally you become a hateful monster." "Is that what happened to you?" I ventured. Her eyes flashed brightly at me. "I don't let it get that far out of hand anymore. It's naive to think that desire and pressure will get me what I want." "That's one theory," I said. "Where's Jason now?" "Still on tour. His career always comes first. Even as a friend, Jason is never around when I need him most." "Sure, doll. We all just sit here on the face of the earth waiting on the whim of some Principessa." I made a mental note to check the Lieutenant Branco on the whereabouts of Jason Sears. That and Max Harkey's diary. "That's why I flirt with Rafik, too," she added, bringing me out of my thoughts. "That man is yours, and yours alone. Everyone seems to know it except me." I confessed that I did use him as a further test of Max's affection for me, but I didn't mean anything by it. "I hope you don't hate me for it. It's all harmless. No one gets hurt." Only dead, she went on. But as you saw that night, Max had absolutely no interest in me as a woman. Just the professional aspect. Oh, plenty of that, she said, but it's still humiliating to hear the man you love respond to your desires so frankly. I can still hear him say it in that arrogant, erudite manner of his. But my dear, we are friends, as though that precluded any sexual attraction, and to think I used to get wet just thinking about him. That comment put Tony DiNatale in the finals for the Snips Award for unrequited candor. But Max Harkey's collegial affection and admiration notwithstanding, I wondered if his rejection was motive enough for her to kill him. And beyond the other discards in her deck of usables, whom was Tony exploiting now? Me? Was she here at Snips solely to build a strong case against her own criminal guilt? So that I, along with Rafik, would perceive her as the divine and innocent angel of music. Was that her present use of Rafik as well, or did it extend to his extension? Tony, I said, do you remember that night when I was leaving? I saw a musical score on the piano. I asked you about it. The score to the Phoenix, she said. Of course, I remember. It's extremely valuable. A hand-tinted cover. I know, but the next morning the score was gone. It wasn't on the music rack, where it had been the night before. So when did it go away? An annoyed frown appeared on her face. I'm sure I don't know, I shrugged casually. I thought you might. No, she said flatly. Maybe you should ask the police about it. I already did. As I removed the protective cape from her shoulders, I put one last question to her. Did you know Max kept a diary? No, she said with a blank look, and then with sudden brightness added, but now that you've told me, I'd love to get my hands on it. She ran her fingers through her hair and gave me a satisfied smile. You're very good, she said. I gave her the family discount for the shampoo and blow dry, which meant it was free. Maybe someday I'd get in to collect it in personal service from my erstwhile lover. Right after Tony left the salon, Nicole hauled me back to my office for what I assumed would be a down-home friendly chaw and talk. Instead, I heard, just what did you think you were doing? Huh? Talking about the lieutenant like that. His personal life is nobody's business, especially not hers. A suspect, and she dares to call him names. What names? You heard what she said. Nico, we talked about everything but Branco. Lieutenant Branco. Doll, are you jealous? I can't believe. Don't be vulgar, she said from her high horse. Stanley, you can ruin your own domestic life if you want, but please leave Lieutenant Branco out of it. So now it's domestic life and Branco in the same sentence. He is not Branco. Show more respect for the man. I need a pill. You need a spanking. She walked out of my office and slammed the door. There was no doubt now Nicole and Branco had made it. The once cool and worldly Mrs. Albright was about to become a silly young Deb, a love thrall to a cop. Was such a thing possible? Was the ultimate driving force of the universe really male ejaculate? And contrary to satellite photos, was the Earth's axis truly a cosmic-sized erection? After work, I left the salon by the back door and headed home. Once safely in my apartment, I fed Miss Sugar and then poured myself a double shot of bourbon. Thus began the toboggan slide into self-imposed despair. Later that night, Rafik telephoned to thank me for doing Tony's hair. He even complimented my work, to which I responded, just shampoo. Are you drinking? He asked. Lil. What is wrong, Stenny? Nothing. I'm sorry for our disagreement today. Embarrassed by my own slurred speech, I didn't dare answer him. I wanted to maintain a light tone, as though our misunderstanding and separation earlier that day had never happened. I was just spending a relaxing night at home, just me and Jack Daniels in my sodden state of mind. If I tried to explain anything, I'd lose all control and just blubber and wail in a torrent of tears, and that would only irritate the hyper-controlled man who was once my lover. Shall I come to you? He said humbly, but even through the fog, I knew that he must have been feeling guilty too, especially with Tony DiNatale as a house guest in his own one-room apartment. What good would be his coming to me now? What kind of resolution could two guilt-laden people achieve, especially with one of them verging on the sloppy boo-hoos? I struggled to gather what was left of my wits and then pronounced my verdict. I have to wash the cat, I said with perfect elocution. I sounded like a junior league snubbing the town's most desirable bachelor. Rafik responded the only way he could after hearing such a brazen lie. Is somebody there? How could I explain that I had already been as unfaithful as I suspected him of being? Stunny, he said. I couldn't speak, suffocating by bathos. Why are you drinking? He said. Was the concern in his voice real? Lunga posa. Rafik, I managed to say. We are all the same, and then I hung up before he could hear me sobbing. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.